Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator. I'm all about capturing and curating career and life stories as a meaningful way to celebrate a milestone moment like a big O birthday, anniversary, retirement, or graduation. And I'm at my best when curating photo books that move your memories from the basement or your phone or your computer to the coffee table, giving you and your family and friends access to these treasured memories for years to come. I also love curating and capturing life and career stories through this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? It's a series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they're not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing An Ly-Tampere. I hope I didn't destroy that name too much. So
very good, Kathy.
Welcome, An. It's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And An is a business coach. We're going to pause for a moment to hear from a very happy Life Story Curator client.
My name is Eleanor Allen, and I recently finished a project with Kathy about my mother's life story. And the reason I wanted to do her life story was that she's first 91 years old, and second, we've been talking about it for years as a family. I have 4 brothers and many nieces and nephews, and we had never gotten around to making the book. Then one day I was out with another friend who's a mutual friend of mine and Kathy's, and she showed me the book that Kathy had made about her parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And I thought right then and there, this is the answer. I got to hire Kathy to get this life story finally done for my mother. So I did. And working with Kathy is just a joy and a pleasure. So first, how do you organize somebody's 90 plus years into a story that's succinct, but also very interesting? And Kathy helped guide myself and my niece and one of my brothers. I have 4 brothers. One of them worked on this project with us intensely into the storyboarding process, and then working into, okay, these are the chapters of her life we're going to work on, which we went by decade. And then for each decade of her life, what do we need? We need this many pictures and this many vignettes. And then Kathy also brought in this great idea to put in QR codes of recordings. I hadn't even thought of that, but we did several of those. Some are my mother's audio recordings. We captured some of those audio files. Some are video recordings of her telling stories of her life that we have in the book, but of course, much more detail when we have the recording. And some QR codes are also documents. So we put a link to my father's autobiography that he had written for us before he passed as well, and my grandfather's autobiography that my father had done interviewing my grandfather. So very special, and those come to life as well in the book. So I encourage you, if you have any inclination of documenting someone's life story in your life, definitely go for it. It's worth the work, and the product, in this case, my mother's story, is absolutely wonderful, and she was over the moon with joy. So don't wait, do it. Document the life of your loved ones or whatever special occasion there is, and work with Kathy, and you will have a wonderful experience.
Yes, and before we get into what she specializes in, we always like to start with the icebreaker questions. So, An, if you wouldn't mind telling us about what part of the world you grew up in, and a little bit about your family dynamic, like birth order, and how you think both of those things shaped you as a person.
Okay, so I grew up in a very tiny city that doesn't exist anymore today, in Belgium. So that's in the part of Europe, and I grew up in the Flemish-speaking part. So I grew up in a small, really farm town. So my dad would go see his patients on horse, and I would go on my little pony wagon. And I am the first one, so the eldest one of 6. And so growing up in this kind of tiny little city, it was really gave me a love for nature and for things around, for animals, make me also very conscious about what we're doing with the earth today. So that's important to safeguard our nature and the world, of course. And then I am the eldest, and I think the eldest has, being the eldest in my family has really tremendously shaped me, because the eldest was sick. Yeah, you know, my mother had 6 children in 9 years. So
Wow.
it meant, yeah, so, you know, first of all, I think like we were very let free. I see now today so many when they have 1 or 2 children, they're really hovering around it. And I was like, with 6, that was just not possible. So it did give me lots of freedom and time to think and find my own way. And it also gave me a sense of responsibility because, of course, with 6 children, at one point or another, you have to chip in. But which was not a bad thing as well. Like, you know, when we had the little baby, the last one, that was like our doll, so we could play around with him. But it gives you a sense of being important and confidence in yourself, because if someone gives you that responsibility to take care of a little one, it is something that you carry on for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, because they give you that confidence that you can do it,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You didn't know if you could do it, and then you just did it, and then you knew you could do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what did you get to do as activities? Again, if this is a small town and a farm, you know, were you able to, did you do sports or music, or was it mostly school and reading, or what were your?
Oh, we did a lots of things. So but I mostly did, yeah, already do reading. So that is something that has come up very, very early, because I remember in school I was really bored out of my mind. So, and I remember I was always reading. So sometimes I would have my teachers who got really annoyed because they saw I was reading. They would ask me a question, and I knew anyway the response to the question. So, reading was really, really that one thing. I was always reading. Sometimes also thinking, reading books at an age that I should not have been reading at all. Like I remember I've read this book on Chinese torture, but I was like still in basic school, right? So
What? But it must have interested you, or you wouldn't have been reading it, huh? So you were interested in that topic?
Oh yes, yeah. I'm still like I still read a very eclectic range of things. And so I had a grandmother who actually had lots of books, like forbidden books that you would never put between the hands of a child. So each time I went there, I would steal a book. And sometimes that torture book, for example, yeah, they found out at school, so that was like a big drama.
So then you probably started hiding the cover, right?
Exactly.
You couldn't see what you were reading.
Exactly. So yeah, there was a lot of reading. I did horse riding as well. So we had a horse at home. So that was really, that still is one of my passions. The writing as well. Like I won my first novel contest when I was 8 years old. So that developed as well. Swimming, I hated swimming, and ballet, hated ballet as well. That's
Were
kind
those
of
things that kind of, you know, your parents kind of, oh, you need to do these things? Is that why you?
Oh, yeah. Specifically the ballet, because I went to quite high level. So at one point I was doing like 7 to 8 hours ballet per week,
Oh,
which is horrible if you hate it. Like now I really love going to watch ballet, but doing it myself, my God, no.
no, no. So, how many languages do you speak?
I speak 4. So I speak Flemish, which is my mother tongue, French, which is my second tongue, Italian, which is really my love language, and then English, of course, and a little bit of Chinese. But you know, I'm embarrassed to say that I've been married for 7 years with a Chinese speaking person, and my Chinese is still very, very low.
Well, you cut him slack because he's not pronouncing your last name as you were telling
No,
me.
exactly.
He's got to give you slack maybe for that language barrier. So, okay, so you live in China now,
Singapore.
Singapore now. Okay,
Yes.
wow, I can't wait to hear about. Well, how did I get here? Right? How did you get off
Yes, exactly.
a small farm in Belgium?
Was not in the plans.
Yeah. Okay, well, a couple more icebreakers. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
For the outside world, I'm an absolutely extrovert, but in reality, I'm really an introvert. I can do my best and rationalize that I have to be social at the outside, but I'm an introvert who loves her quiet and silent, and I sometimes just really need to be on my own.
Yeah, to get and recharge the battery, keep your energy up.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And then on the fun meter, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a couch potato and 5 being the life of the party, where would you put yourself?
Oh, 5, absolutely.
Totally a 5. Okay.
Totally a 5.
Awesome. And then on the risk meter, same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being low risk taker, 5 high risk taker. Where do you put yourself?
I would say 4, but I'm like a deliberate risk taker. So some people think I'm very impulsive, but I'm always thinking about something or somehow. So when I have to take a decision, and I say yes, it's like a really thought out decision. I don't take just inconsiderate risks.
Yeah. But they may not have seen all the thought that you put into
Yes,
it, right? It's so
exactly.
a little impulsive.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I love all of these questions because it just kind of sets the stage about, who you were as a young person. And then as we go down your path and we learn about what you do today, then it really helps us better understand and give some insight into you. So,
Yeah.
So before we get into the whole, how did I get here? Tell us a little bit about what here is, right? What does it mean to be a business coach?
Yes, so I help book writing coaches get more clients. So, or in other words, I'm a business coach specifically for coaches who help writers. So a long story to get there, but a very, very exciting job. And so I do this from Singapore, but I mostly have my clients in Australia and the North American sphere, so the USA and Canada.
Oh, okay. And you said it was a long way to get here. So tell us when you were a young person, sounds like you were always doing your writing. What did you want to be when you grew up? Did you want to be a business coach and a writing coach? Or what did you
Oh
think your
dear,
career was?
no. I didn't even know that existed. So let alone that I was thinking of doing that. No, I know that my very earliest ideas, I wanted to be a firewoman. So that was my very first thing. I was only 4, but I wanted to be a firewoman. Then I had my period where I wanted to be a psychologist. And then it was the journalist period. And I really played around with that idea for a very, very long time. But I come out of a family where you become a doctor and that's it. Like there's not much other possibilities. So when I was 18, I decided I want to do theology. I can only let you imagine the reaction of my family when I said to them, guys, I wanted to do theology. This is a non-Catholic family. I'm the only Catholic in this family and I want to do theology.
Okay, so
I settled on law.
so you said on law, is that what you said?
Yes, I settled on law. And the idea for me was really, I do my law studies and then I do theology law and I go into theological journalism. But then, things change. And when in my one of the first jobs I got, so I had to pay my studies myself. And one of the first jobs I got was to be a hostess. And I was a hostess in a museum, the Quai Branly Museum in France. And so that was one of the most awful jobs I got because it was super exhausting, but it was also one of the most interesting because being as a hostess, we were in the museum, so we could go into the collections, we could talk with everyone, the curators, the lawyers, everyone. And that was a moment, that was a really crucial moment in my path because I was like, actually, I really love culture, I really love law. Why don't I go into cultural heritage law? So I specialized in cultural heritage law. And that's also where my first job took me because I started working at UNESCO for the Belgian embassy. So focusing initially also on cultural heritage law. And then it expanded a little bit. So when I was at UNESCO, that was absolutely my dream job. Loved working there. But I was also there when UNESCO got this very big financial breakdown. So from one day to another, 25% of their budget was cut out. So it meant that lots of projects I was working on were no longer possible and we're going to stop working. But also that I was on the budgeting committee. Now we're talking here about someone who's focused on cultural heritage law. I had never ever seen a budget. So when we saw that would be the thing. And suddenly it was like, and you have to go on the budget committee because we have no one else. Guys, this is a little bit complicated for me. So I went on the budget committee, and it was really super exciting because I've never been on a budget committee, but seeing how we were making really important decisions, like we're closing a center, but it also means that if you close that center, there are people who no longer have a job. And here in the developed world, we still have the possibility that we can have a job, but we're talking about countries, where that center was maybe the only way they had to get a job. So it was very heartbreaking to see, but also I felt such an imposter because I really need to work on those financial skills. So after 2 years on this job, I was like, you know what, I'm going back to school. I do a master's degree in finance. And then actually I really got a passion for finance. And I'm not someone who does things half. So I decided, you know what, I'm going into merger and acquisitions. So, which was a complete change, because there I go from culture heritage to finance. Like, no one does that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I just love, thank you for sharing all that, because I just love how these careers play out and how people make these decisions, and you start going down these paths, and then life happens, right? You lose your
Yes.
job on the one side of the project, but they're like, but we're going to just put you over here. And then you're like, well, now I have to learn this budget thing. But I got to tell you, learning business, companies, nonprofits, organizations, whatever, from the budget side up is huge, right? Really
Oh, absolutely.
understanding what is the driving force that keeps the doors open? How do we do the great work we get to do? And where does this money come from? I mean, it's really very powerful, right? Which obviously is what kind of sparked that desire for you to go back and get more education around it. So, wow.
Yes,
Okay.
of course. Yeah, because I feel even as a woman, we're not told, go take a finance education course, because it's really something that I found so important. And I really talk about it a lot, saying like, as a woman, you have to know your finances. You just can't say, oh, my husband is taking care of it, or I'm doing this or that. You really have to get into it and know what we're talking about, especially as business owners. Because I see so many business owners, and when I tell them, so what is your retirement plan, or and they're like, what retirement plan? And just like, well, no, you have to think about that. You're no longer in a corporate where they might potentially take care of this for you. You're a business owner, you really need to think about that. So
yeah, where's the 401k or the
yes,
the pension,
yes,
whatever
exactly.
the plan is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I love that you also said you never go half with anything. You're like in 100%. So now you're getting your master.
Absolutely. Yes.
And again, it sounds like you're paying for all this yourself, huh?
Yes.
So paying as
exactly.
you go, okay, wow, which is commendable, because that's not easy.
No. And I must say, I didn't say that when I was going through it, and I was always like, I would never put any of my children to what I had to do. But I found it was such a valuable learning school, because I came out of university. I knew how to go to interview. I knew how to write up a resume. I knew that when you come in a company, and even I use that still today, you have to be respectful of the other person. You don't go to your job when you want it. You have to be on time. And so I found there were so many things that I no longer had to learn, which allowed me to also be ready to take up more responsibilities than someone who would come in. Because I remember my first job, after a couple of weeks, I was really already in there. What I saw my other colleagues, they were still like struggling by like, how is this all working? And now suddenly I have to have like strict hours, and I have to be at 9 at my job, while beforehand I would sleep until 10 or 11, which has never been my case. I could never sleep in. So it's definitely something that I will push my children to work as well. Not as much as I did, but at least that they have a job as soon as they can, just to see what it is, the real world.
Yeah. Well, and there's a certain amount of pride that goes with, I did this, I paid for this. And oh, by the way, I recognize the value of what I'm doing because I'm paying for it. And would I do this if I had to pay for it? So sometimes that's the question, right? If someone else is funding you and you're like, well, then I'm going to study X. Well, wait a minute. If you were paying for it, would you have studied X, or would you study Y, or what's going to give you an opportunity maybe to pay that back? Yeah. So anyway,
absolutely.
Interesting work ethic.
Yeah.
There, so. Okay, so you get your master's degree, and were you working like part-time and going to school part-time, or full? One of them was full-time?
No, full. Yeah, I've always a full-timer. I'd like to go for it, because those, the professional program that was like 2-3 years, I was like, I don't have time for this.
I don't have time for this.
Let's go for it. Yeah. And I was so used to it during my studies. I did my university studies, and I had like 3 or 4 jobs at the same time. So it's just a question of planning and organization.
So
And
you
not
were
sleeping a lot.
full-time working, full-time student. Yeah, I can do it all. And probably
Yes.
no time sleeping. It sounds like maybe you don't need sleep, huh?
No, yeah. I think one of the most difficult thing for me was actually to really get to the point of actually 4 hours a night. That's not enough. I need more sleep. So
Okay. So you did discover that about yourself, that you do need
yes.
sleep.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah.
to know.
So
what
after sorry.
I was just gonna say, so what was the kind of the next step then?
So next step was I had to look for an internship in merger and acquisition. So now to give you the context, I was 30 years old. This is in France. This was like a retired woman that was going into a new job. Because in France, people go in merger and acquisition when they're 20, 21. So imagine I come here.
Oh, so they're thinking you're way older than everyone else in mergers and
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I had to start like from the bottoms up, right?
Mhm.
I had left my diplomacy career too early to be able to get into a higher management job. So I had to start from the bottoms up and find myself an internship. So that was a fun experience when people tell you, oh, you're a little bit old, and and I was like, I'm 30, guys. Yes, exactly. So I found an internship, started. Was really nice. I really enjoyed it. But then I got a call from London, and so there was someone said, we looking for someone who has this financial experience and who has this diplomatic experience, because we're having a bit of an issue here in this company between the French and the English community. They don't really understand each other. The company is going to really big transformation. We need to get everyone on the same plan. So I was like, okay. I was really hesitating because I had worked all this to have finally my merger and acquisition internship, starting my career. But on the other hand, this was just such a valuable opportunity. It was
Well,
like
yeah.
I will
And
never
it's
have that again.
starting at a higher level. And I mean, they're
Oh,
recruiting you
absolutely.
at the big
Oh,
job
yes.
already.
Yeah,
Wow.
because also it was such a difference. I was an intern and I had tried to negotiate my salary, and they were like, you're an intern, you're 30, it's charity that we're doing here. And they were like, you will have your PA and your car. And I was like, and if you start talking to me like this.
Yeah, it's pretty easy decision, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. So I moved to London, and that was really the time of my life, because the job didn't pan out exactly as I was hoping it would pan out. But I was in London, and I'm Flemish, and the Flemish we have this English-based education. So the culture is really very similar to the one we have in the UK. And it's quite opposite to the one you have in France. So in the UK, no one would say to you, oh, Anne, you're 30 years old, you want to go in merger and acquisition, you're way too old. So it was really like, no, here you come, we'll try it out. And if it's not working out, well, you move on to the next thing. And I was really happy to be back in that culture and building up a little bit my confidence again, because I felt this whole period in France, I had the impression that nothing counted anymore. And it made me realize that actually I was someone quite good. It was just that this French counterparts could see what was going on, and were not able to explore what I was bringing. So it was really nice. With my husband, we completely delved into the culture life in London. I reconciled myself with my dancing as well. I even was a judge on a dancing competition. So it was really, really an amazing time. But after 4 years, I felt that I came to the end of it. Also, I was pregnant at that time. It seemed to me that UK was extremely competitive for children, very expensive as well. I already knew that I wanted to spend more time with my child than I had now. So, well, then I just didn't see where my child was going to fit in. I thought we were always going to find a solution, but still, I was like, so I was already thinking that I was probably going to take a salary cut, and I just didn't see how the UK was going to be able, how it's going to be possible for us. So said to my husband, yeah, maybe we have to go back to France. And then one day he comes home and he says, well, you know what? I want to go to Singapore. And I was like, okay, well, let's go to Singapore. So,
Now, did he
Uh,
have family there, or what was kind of driving him for that decision?
yeah, he has a lot of family still here in the area. But the whole idea was that we would go there with his parents and go back on his origins. So they came from Laos, Cambodia. And so the idea was really to do this big trip to Laos and Cambodia, see where they come from, maybe do to China as well, like to see really where his origins come from. Yeah.
So in a way, it sounds almost like maybe a sabbatical or just a break
Yeah.
in both of your careers to have this amazing time with his family and kind of
Yes.
kind of do this exploration and this really cool journey. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. It was not like we didn't plan on staying here for 20 years. It was just like, let's go explore, do that trip, and then we'll see. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, but then obviously something pulled you to stay.
Well, COVID. So.
Oh, then that crazy thing happened. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, there's
Exactly. Yeah, because we moved literally one month before COVID hit. So because they start talking about it here much earlier than they did back in Europe. So we were here, had secured an apartment, and then suddenly everything closed down. And this was really a very strict lockdown. You were not allowed to go out, to do anything. So here I was in a new country with a baby under my hands, a husband who had to work, like not knowing anyone. It was, when people ask you the question, what would you take to an island if there's no one else on that island? I can really tell you what I would take, because this was it.
Yeah. So all of a sudden thrust into isolation.
Oh, yeah, it was really utter isolation. And I was used to isolation, because of my specific situation as a student and so on. But this was completely different, because it's literally you have people around you, but you can't get in contact with them. Everybody is scared. People are really feeling down because we're all in the same situation. So even if you speak with other people, I feel it depressed me more than anything else. My friends in Europe, they were all, the lockdown came out much later, and then was finished also much earlier on. So I remember like last year we had these summer holidays and we were still blocked. And they were talking about how amazing it was. They were on trips and holidays. So you're like,
Oh no.
I just want to go drink a coffee.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's simple. Just a simple, just get out of your apartment, right? So it sounds like you couldn't even leave your apartment to be outdoors.
No. We were not. I did go out very early in the morning, so to make sure I was not checked out, because they really literally gave you here fines. So if they found you where you should not be without your mask and all thing. So my baby at the time, it was a very early waker. So at 5:30 in the morning, I was like, quickly run. Yes, exactly.
Wow. Well, what did you do to cope then? I mean, that is really a difficult situation. And I think, being here in the US, like we were in lockdown, but I could also go outside because we kind of live in this rural community. And, we went for drives and, we could be outdoors in the sun and you just felt like there was fresh air, right? So to be isolate, yeah, it's a different experience, right? Everybody has their own quarantine experience, right? But yours was very, very different than what I experienced. So what did you do for to take care of yourself then? But morning walks, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. Very stressful sometimes.
Yeah, because you're like you were breaking the rules, right? And
absolutely
consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. But actually those walks, they were really nice because the nature took over here in Singapore. So for example, there were otters. You would go outside and on the highway, you would literally see those animals pass by. Like they really took over everything. There were so many birds and things. I remember that's something we did with my child as well. We would sit hours in front of the window and just watch the birds because we had trees in front of our window. And so the birds came in as well. So that was definitely one. And a second one was I really strengthened my relationship with a very good friend of mine. So every week we would look for a ballet and then we would watch a ballet together online. have a chat as well. So that was really helpful as well. And then just taking care of my child. Like I did so many things. We cooked, we baked, we did all those kind of things. We did lots of painting, crafting. I don't know.
Yeah.
all
So
the
you
things.
got to be really full-time mom, and you didn't have
Absolutely.
that career pulling you one way and child pulling you one way, husband pull, and all these things you really could
No.
focus on. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. It was absolutely not in my plans, because I remember when I got pregnant, I said to my husband, you know what, I'll probably go back after 3 weeks. And then I was very, very lucky. I had my boss at the time, and she said, I'm just take a year, just plan for a year, and then you'll see what's happening. And luckily she did so, because it really gave me the time also to say, okay, actually, I really want to spend more time with this child, and see how this child is growing up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and someone who doesn't do anything half-half, like you said, right? Where you would
Mm.
go to school full time and you had 3 and 4 jobs, always busy and running and doing and accomplishing, right? To really take that pace is so
Yes,
different. But yet you
absolutely.
also knew the purpose of it was so much higher, right?
Exactly,
Yeah, the
exactly.
number one priority
Yeah,
in your life. So
yeah,
very cool.
that's it.
Now, did you ever get to do the great trip with your husband's family? I mean, did you ever get to do that exploring, or is that something now on the docket that you still want to do?
Unfortunately not, because my husband's father is very ill now. So it's very unlikely that we will ever be able to do the trip. But um, I like to tell myself that he's very happy that we've done it. I mean, his mother was very happy, and I think both his parents are very happy that we go back to the origins, and that even if we don't do that trip, they're with us here. In mind and in heart and in spirit. I don't know
Yeah.
how you say it again in English, but
Yeah.
I am convinced they're here. They've done. It was probably not their purpose, but I think now for them it is also their journey.
Yeah. Because now they're closer to, a grandbaby and you all. And, that is got to be really comforting, I would think, even though you don't.
Yeah. Well, they are still in France, because they
Oh, they were
immigrated.
in France. Oh, I was thinking they were already in Singapore. And
No, no, yeah.
oh,
No. Yeah, they're in France.
okay. Never mind.
No, don't worry. It's sometimes a complicated story to follow.
Yeah. So, how did you kind of jump back into your career then, or what led you to say, okay, now things are settled, the isolation is over. Now what?
Well, the thing is, when I arrived here, the purpose was really that I would go. I mean, first of all, it was not the purpose I would stay here for such a long time. So I always kept in mind that I would go to my job. Unfortunately, with COVID, the thing was we could get out of Singapore, but it was going to be impossible to come back. So we've decided to stay put here. That was initially the first thing. So after a year, one, I had spent so much time with my baby, and I was like, if we stay here, this is really the big plus, that I can stay a little bit more and have more time to spend with my baby. At the other hand, also in my job in London, they say, okay, and we understand they would really like you to come back after your maternity leave, but there's too much of a time difference. So or you come back to London or you don't come back to London. But if you don't come back to London, that's the end of the job. So suddenly I didn't have a job. I had this child. Also, I have to say, I didn't have any childcare. So when I started applying for jobs here, I was thinking, I might wing it in the beginning, except that it was really impossible to have any childcare. And that also when I had those interviews, I remember the very first interview I had, they said to me, yeah, so do you have a maid? Because you will have to travel a lot once all it is over. And also the hours are very long, because it's like you will start at 8, you come back at 8. And I was suddenly thinking, okay, wait. But if I put my child in bed at 8 and I have to, when do I see my child? So it was just, I really started to panic, because like, okay, what's happening here? And then when I looked for part-time jobs, it was like, yeah, no, very demenial work. Suddenly it was data entering, because, you become part-time. And so I was really like, okay, probably something is wrong here, because I never put in my mind that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I just really wanted to go back to corporate, have my career. But then I realized corporate didn't want me back, because the schedules were just too inflexible for what it was. So I was like, fine. And so at the side, I always had this side hustle of a networking coach. So that started when I had my first job at UNESCO. People saw I was good at networking, started asking me if I could do workshops, and then came out the individual coaching. So there was always like a small thing hanging around. I must say I am the worst example of a side hustler because I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have any objectives. Like I really wanted, I remember still when people asked me, so, how did you raise your prices? I was like, it was just a bet. It was New Year. I wanted to raise my prices. No objective, nothing. So, and then having this, because I think it's important you have to know this. I said, you know what, corporate doesn't want me. I'll become a full-time coach. I become a full-time networking coach. Except that it was absolutely not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Because I was a networking coach back in Europe. So people saw me networking at work. I had my reputation that came from, which means that I didn't have to spend so much time on convincing people or, showing people that I was a good networking coach. They just saw me. All my clients that were people who had worked with me, colleagues or previous colleagues, or it was like word of mouth. So people knew me. And also I had a very specific target audience. I worked with diplomats and financial people. So that was like really how I had built up my business, my side hustle, without really realizing it. And here I was in Singapore where, well, I didn't have a corporate job, so I could like show what I was doing. I was targeting everyone, and everyone who wanted to network could come with me, which is absolutely exhausting because you're talking to everyone, and and I was on a market that is extremely competitive for the coaching. Like coaching is not something seen as very positive here. For many people, coach is a scammer. So, certainly I had to deal with this, which was not in the case in London and Paris, because I was dealing with people who, one, had the money, secondly, very well knew how important it was to do the networking coaching. So I started that, put a lot of time and money and energy in it. And it didn't work out. It was just really crumbling. And I suddenly saw myself lowering my prices, like giving in more and more of myself, getting on LinkedIn, publishing practically every day, because I was like, this has to work, this has to work, this has to work. Then I got this really moment. It was lightning moment. It was Sunday morning, 5 a.m. and I was working on my LinkedIn article. So I'm not even telling you, I woke up and I started putting on my computer. I was already working on the article. So I don't know at which time I would. And suddenly my child started to cry and I got really angry. Like we talk about this mom angry, but there's not many people actually talk about that mom angry. But suddenly, like in that second, I was like, oh my God, now I could really, really hurt my baby because I am so exhausted, so frustrated. I don't know where to go anymore. This is just not possible. And so at that point, I say, you know what, this is not worth it. So I closed my computer, didn't publish anything on LinkedIn from that day on. Stopped everything because like I really need to take a break, take a step back and really start to figure out what is it that I want, because there has to be a middle way. I want to go back to work. Full-time networking coach is not working. So what is going to work? And so taking that time, step back, it really confirmed, okay, I want to spend time with my child, but I want to also have a job. Entrepreneurship is the best option for me because it will allow me to have a flexible schedule and being able to work around my child's schedule. So now it's just figuring out what I want to do. And so I signed up for a business coaching program because I don't know what I want to do, but I'll just get on it. And one of the first exercises they asked us to do was, okay, what were the things that you really liked doing? And the one thing that really popped in my mind was that writing. And so I was like, yeah, actually the writing, the reading, I really want to do something with that. That was like my thing. But there's so many things you can do. You can do a journalist, you can be a writer, you can be a writing, like there's so many things. And so I was like, I don't know. And then I got really confirmation that I wanted to be in the book industry because one of my last networking clients was a bookpreneur. So he's someone who has here in Singapore a company that sells books online. And so he wanted to be coached with me to improve his networking. And actually we did half of a session on networking and it very quickly went on to business coaching. with his store, and we talked about social marketing and the whole thing. I was just like, you know what, I really am excited. This is the first time in such a long time. I'm so excited because one, it's in the book industry. Two, it's business coaching. It's really like helping to set up someone up, because in the meanwhile, I had really reflected on what had gone wrong in my business. I think, you know, you should never be scared to say, hold on for a second, this is not working. What is not working? Let's take a step back. So I had really done that work and say, okay, what did I like with the networking coaching is that it was not in my favorite industry. And secondly, maybe I'm good to do something else. So I had those things. I went to my own program, my own coaching. And so I continued doing that exercise. What did I like with it? And then I remember that in London, when I was pregnant, I had signed up for a writing course. And I remember I really had such a fun when I signed up. It was really like a last gift. And I was like, you know, I will no longer have the time to do that. Let's do it now. And I started as being someone who dabs her toes into writing from here and there. And I came out of the writing course as a full-fledged writer writing her first novel. Like, this was serious business. This was no longer a dream or an idea or something that I might do when I was 100. Now, this was something real. And I was so amazed by that. I was like, maybe I want to help people do the same. So when I was like thinking, you know what, maybe I can become a book coach myself. So I signed up for the training, did that training, but then I saw like the other book coaches, they were speaking about the writers with a twinkle and a spark, and you know, there was an excitement, and I was like, oh dear, I'm already tired of the idea that I have to go to all the submissions and readings and the whole thing. But I was like, you know, maybe this is imposter syndrome. English is not my mother tongue. You know, you find really nice excuses. I did get my first client, and I realized, yeah, that this was not going to work. So I was very honest with her. I said, you know what, I mean, I think you're an excellent writer, but I'm just not a good book coach. I can do it, but I'm just not, this is not where I'm excellent in that. But so suddenly I was in my business coaching program, still didn't know what to do. I had this book coaching training, seeing that this was really not working out. I had the bookpreneur coaching where I was like, yeah, book industry, that for sure, that's where I want to do. But really, what I'm going to do all this, I don't know. It's like a very confusing and difficult moment. And then actually I got a sign from destiny, like they say, because there was a book coach on the class, and she said, like, Anne, would you like to help me with my business? And I was very surprised. I was like, why would you ask me that? I was like, no, but you're giving so much good advice to everybody else, and I'm sure if you help me, it would be good for my business. So, you know, of course, I'm very flattered. And, you know, if you talk to me like this, of course, I will say yes. And I remember from the moment we were on that call, I was like, yeah, this is it. Actually, this is the thing. And so I remember going back to my other coaching group and say, you know, guys, I'm going to be a business coach for book coaches. And I remember that everybody was like, what the hell is that?
Yes.
Yes, what? Because I remember even writing it in my diary, like I have a business diary. And that is something I really advise to everyone, like have a business diary, write everything down, because, you know, year after year, you watch back on what happened the year before, and you're like, my God, I was really, it was really down or this. And I remember I had this entry in my diary where I said, what does it even mean to be a book coach to be a business coach for book coaches? Who is looking for that? Like, really, this is so niche. But it was just such a confirmation. Like, I had really found my place. Like, I'm so passionate about financial education and the whole and how business has to be viable. And I'm really passionate about the book industry. And I found something to bring it together. And that's like, yeah, you know, even just talking about it, I don't know if you hear it, but I'm like,
oh yeah, I can hear
I'm
this.
so,
and
the passion comes up.
Yeah. Well, I love your story here that you were forcing something, you know, the networking coaching. And even though you were really good at it, that just wasn't going to be your thing in this new country and new world, right? After COVID and all of that, right? And so, you know, stepping back and figuring out, well, what was it that made you successful someplace else versus here? That's super impactful. Sometimes you never figure that out, right? You never understand what were maybe the external factors that were causing that success that you hadn't even appreciated right at the time.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
then you just start following I need to. And I remember when I was in transition in between corporate after I'd been laid off, finally I was just getting really frustrated. I couldn't find a job. And finally I'm like, I'm just going to go paint the bathroom upstairs. We wanted to paint the bathroom. I'm just going to go paint the bathroom. Because, you get so caught up in it that I have to do all of these activities to set all these things in motion that will lead to something.
Yeah,
and sometimes you just need to stop and step back and breathe and let the universe and the world kind of do what it's going to do. And sure enough, that I started that, I think, during the day on a Friday because I had the time. And then later that night, I got a call from this consulting firm that had wanted me to do some contracting with them. And I was like, what? It was almost one of those things. I had left my phone downstairs. I wasn't even paying attention. Where normally, if anything would have come, you were right there to. And so it's so
you're ready to go.
Yeah. And I remember thinking back later that as I had a friend who was going through similar job search and things of different, that, it was about, read a book, take a class, find something you do love to change your energy and your mojo, because you end up getting so on this hamster wheel of trying and trying and trying and forcing. And sometimes you just have to step back. And then when you go to a class that's something that excites you, doors start to open and you start meeting new people, and it's crazy. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, but you have to take that step back. And I think I see around me that so many people, they don't take that step back. I see for example, I had a client who came in and she said, I'm spending 14 hours per day on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, if you spend 14 hours on Instagram per day, it should really bring you in a lot of clients. So if you don't have any clients, you have to take a step back. And for her, it was like, no, I can't change that, because that's how everybody. And I think that's really the difference between, people like you and other people, that they just don't take that step back because it's so difficult to take that step back.
Yeah. You think you're doing all the right things you need to be doing. And
yes, exactly.
And sometimes people are telling you the things that you need to be doing. And so you start doing those things, and then you're like, oh, I can't stop. But then you're like, but maybe I need to, for my own psyche.
Exactly.
I mean, this is where you have to trust that inner knowing about, well, what is it going to take? But I also love that, you took a class, you invested in yourself. You were, developing some other skills too. So it wasn't like you were just, sitting on the couch waiting for the phone to ring. You were saying, what, this is going to give me, some new learning, and then who knows where that's going to, I mean, there was just all these things, which is probably why you were such a master networker, right? Is because you were always thinking, well, what else can I be doing? What are the things I'm interested in? And then when you gravitate to those things, then good things happen. And so, yeah, that's
oh yeah, exactly. You have to take action. Otherwise, well, there's nothing. Yeah. I always say, there's not a God upstairs who suddenly say, oh, let's, help her.
Yeah.
You have to help yourself, and then God will help you.
Yeah. And then I love that too, about how do you be in action versus being in inaction, right? When you're in inaction or indecision, then, things just kind of swirl. But if you start taking steps towards something and you don't even know where it's going, but you're just taking steps and you're being in action and learning and growing, how can that be wrong, right? It doesn't,
yeah, exactly.
Going to lead to the next job, but it is going to lead to personal growth. It's going to lead to a better psyche, and better mental health.
But it's not easier. It's not easier. Because now when I talk about closing that computer at 5 a.m. in the morning, it seems very easy, but at the time it was really difficult. And I really struggled for a long time saying, maybe I should go back. So
yeah. And there's a lot of self-doubt and reflection and thinking, like you said earlier, about how you're very deliberate with your thinking and your thoughts. So
yeah.
Well, on this, it's been fascinating. It's been really good stuff, but we do have to start wrapping up.
Yes.
So, but I love how
I'm the kind of person we can talk for hours.
Well, that's what happened the first time we met. So,
yes, exactly.
So I do need to start wrapping up. I have a couple of questions that I like to close with. The first is, when you look back now on where you are at and what you're doing with your career, and when you just kind of look back on your life, what do you think has served you best? A characteristic, a habit, a strength? What served you best?
I think it's my curiosity. And not, I have there's a problem. there's a solution. So whenever I don't feel good or there's something that's bothering me, I will go look for what I can do to improve myself or resolve that issue.
Yeah. Well, and I see that in your story that each time you kept stepping into curiosity, you had a positive outcome of it. When you weren't in curiosity and you thought you knew it all, you know, and that you
Yes,
thought you knew
exactly.
what to do,
Exactly.
is
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you
yeah.
got stuck. So I love that, staying in curiosity. Okay.
Yeah, because
And
even today, I mean, there's never a moment that I wake up and I say, you know, I'm the business coach who knows everything. Continuously developing myself is something that I really think is important, both for me, but also for my writing coaches.
yeah. And I would think each client you learn something new.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
always this learning and growth. I think
yeah.
coaching is such a cool um role because it is about a lot of times helping someone get out of their own way. And it's not about
Yes,
that
yeah.
you have all the answers, because you having all the answers, if they don't have a listening, or they don't believe it, or they didn't maybe get there on their own without some coaching, right? Or some probing,
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
really
because
cool way.
also for me, the idea is like when I have a writing coach, they know best their business and they know best what they can or what they can't do. So I always have to adapt to them and find what is helping them. If someone tells me I hate Facebook, then I need to find like then we need to find a solution for them not to be just on Facebook, but do another marketing plan. So yeah, it's really adapting myself always to the person so that they have their business of their dreams, not me saying this is your business of your dreams.
Yeah, yeah. Locking them into something that
Yeah,
isn't going to work for them either, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so second closing question and
Mhm.
second and final. What words of wisdom maybe impacted you when you were at times where you were stuck or in transition? Any words of wisdom to share?
Uh, well, people always say to me that I am very curious because I'm the kind of very strange, if I can say, because I seem to be very impulsive and always doing things that no one else does. But for me, my motto is really like the question is not if I can open the door, but how I can open the door. So there's always a way to get what you want or if you know, I don't know if you know this song. It's one of my favorite. She's Only a Woman. And in that song, at one point, she said, and she never gives in, she just changes her mind. It's not that she doesn't want it, but that she just changes her mind. And that's the thing. If, for example, you want something and you really fight for it and then you get to it and you realize, actually, this is not what I want. It's you know, at least you have this idea that this is not what you want, but that you have to look for something else.
Yeah,
Like that.
yeah.
I'm not sure this was very clear. Sorry.
Well, I love your curiosity on that still too, right? Is that's what
Yeah.
impacts you, is that you keep, how do I open the door? Whereas, many people like, no, the door closed, so I'm done. And that's
Yeah,
not for you.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, you know, because I got always very funny stories on how I got hired. And one of them, actually, I had a really good story about that one. Because when I was hired for my London job, initially I went there for, it was not for a big job, it was for a graduate program. So I went for the graduate program and did the interviews. And actually, the reason I was offered a bigger job is because I went to talk to the CFO. So, and I remember everyone's like, who goes talk to a CFO? Like, you know, you should not be talking to the CFO. But that's how I was offered a bigger job than the one I initially was applying for, because I just went for it. I was just, you know, go talk with the CFO, ask him how he got there, what he did to get there, and how I can get there.
Ah, so again, back to your curiosity, but also your risk taking, right? That you were willing to go in and put
Yes,
yourself in that spot.
exactly.
Very
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, just to go talk to people. You know, I'm really the person that's gets in an elevator and I'm like, oh, I like you. Let's have a chat. And you know, everybody is like, why would you do that? But then like, you know, that's how most of things in my life happened.
Well, and that's how you found me, right? You found me and
Yes,
reached out to
exactly.
me, and I was like, "Well, your story sounds really interesting. Let's chat." I meant to ask you early on, how did you get so good at networking? I guess it's back to what you're just saying now, your curiosity about people and how they got where they are. And I mean, is that part of what created that for you when you were in France and in the UK?
Well, the thing that's really comes back from my difficult student years, actually, because it was very, very difficult in the beginning. I didn't grow up with the idea that you could ask help for someone else. So I had a very pivotal moment in my life where literally there was no food in my fridge anymore. And I spent 10 days trying to survive on like one yogurt pot in the morning and one rice cup in the evening, telling myself that, that was how I was going to survive. After the 10 days, of course, I was completely exhausted. I was like, you know what, I really, really need to learn, ask for help, because this is not sustainable. And I knocked on the door of a social assistant. She was extremely helpful, got me out there. And from that moment on, I did never have any problem anymore to knock on a door, pick up a phone, or just send out an email. Because when you've been at that point where there's just no hope anymore and you are able to knock on a door and ask for help, after that, there's no limit anymore.
Yeah. And then asking for some of the things that you might be asking for in the future maybe didn't seem as life sustaining as how important those things were when it's food related, right? So I can see how your mindset would be about, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Whereas before you're like, I might not have survived, and yet I still had to ask, and I did, and I survived, and now I'm thriving. Wow, great lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I will let you go. Thank you. That's I think a great story to end on. So thank you so much for sharing your story today. And you never know.
Well, thanks again for having me. It was really nice chatting as well with you.
Awesome. And now you're going to be off helping others. So this is great. So listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below and you'll be alerted as new interviews are published. If you have any questions for me or for An, I will publish her social media contact information on my website, lifestorycurator.com, which is also where all these blogs and I will just close with stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing those stories. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.